Star Wars Clone Wars Season 7 Episode 8 called Together Again, which is the, I guess, third part of the Ahsoka Tano storyline where she meets the sisters and has a run-in with the Pikes. And, the last episode was kind of, like I said in my review, it kind of was running on a treadmill. It wasn't really going anywhere, just kind of in the same place. Here, the story does progress, and in a very interesting way. Basically, the Pikes have figured out that they want that spice back, so they're going to let them go and get the spice. They did free them, even though they were captured, but only temporarily to get the spice back. Now, early in the episode, they're teasing, and keep in mind, I'm watching these with no spoilers. I haven't gone on Reddit or anything like that. I'm kind of watching them fresh, so I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's coming up in the future episodes. I haven't kept up with that because I kind of want to be somewhat surprised, even though obviously I know the outcome of everything because we've seen Revenge of the Sith. Still, I want to see what happens with these stories. And when the main Pike guy refers to, is he going to find out this, that, and the third, I immediately thought it was going to be Darth Maul. Immediately from the beginning. Just because, again, the trailer kind of gave it away, but also, who else could it be? Palpatine, Dooku, Grievous? I guess maybe, but Darth Maul is the guy who really got involved in kind of the Star Wars underworld after The Phantom Menace, and of course, after the stuff he did in Clone Wars, the earlier seasons. So the sisters are the ones that end up going to get the spice, and they wind up coming up with this plan where they're going to steal spice from the Pikes and then trade it to get Ahsoka back. Which again is just funny to me because Ahsoka is so powerful that she's sort of like voluntarily, she could just storm out of there is what I'm trying to say. But because she is hiding the fact that she is a Jedi, she does not want to do it. So I did forget to mention that Ahsoka gets out of the prison cell anyways, and that's when they reveal that it is indeed Darth Maul. So I just knew it. I just had a feeling that was going to be the payoff here based on the trailer, and there you go. And I had actually not seen the trailer for a couple of months now, so I don't remember the details. I just know that he's in it, and that he has a confrontation with Ahsoka, and here you go. So I successfully guessed it, even though it wasn't that hard to figure out. Then Ahsoka gets caught and we finally see her using the Force, but she's also doing some badass kung fu moves. I mean, we saw a little bit of this before, but it's just funny how in Star Wars, which is typically, lightsabers, we're seeing martial arts action like many other shows that I watch and cover throughout the years, animated and live action. And there's another fight scene right after, and again we see more of this kind of stuff. So, I like it. I'm down for this kind of stuff in Star Wars. And the big reveal happens because Ahsoka does tell them finally that she's a Jedi. And, of course, they're freaking out because, like it was explained to us in the past, they don't like Jedi because of their parents and what ended up happening. We covered that in the previous episode, or the one before it, I forget. But that's not going to go too well with them. But, hey, at least the truth is now finally out. So we knew it would happen at some point. We knew it would. So that means this arc is definitely... when that happened in the episode, I knew the arc was wrapping up because we're going to get a big conclusion here because now things are finally coming together, if that makes sense. But they do find out that Ahsoka was a Jedi and then left, so, it's not so bad, you know what I mean? At least not initially. And luckily things do work out because, they escape, they have a cool little, space, not really space, but they have a ship sequence with the deflector shields, pretty good stuff. Then they go off into space or whatever, back to Coruscant. And I like how at the end of the episode, the sisters, Trace and Rafa, finally kind of see yeah, you're a Jedi, but you are what we wish the Jedi were, instead of what they are. So it's sort of that perception that some people have of the Jedi not being these folk heroes and being flawed and, the stuff Luke talked about in Last Jedi, which is true. I mean, when you watch this, but not entirely true because the Jedi do try to do good and many of them are genuinely good people, but they're caught up in the wrong sort of situation here because I don't know if it's still canon or not, but the Revenge of the Sith novelization discusses how the Jedi were sent on missions by Palpatine. The Supreme Chancellor has control over where the Jedi go, or at least reasonable control. So that's also part of this. That's also why these things happened. But I do like the fact they're starting to soften up on Jedi and kind of, you know what I mean? Sort of accept Ahsoka for who she is. Now, this part of the story arc is pretty much over, but because Darth Maul is out there, the story is not really complete yet when it comes to what's going to happen as far as Darth Maul and Ahsoka go in Season 7. And the episode, I think this episode actually works because it actually establishes a few different things. Number one, it teases the Siege of Mandalore, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. But number two, it has an interesting tie-in with Solo, because in Solo, obviously you saw that Darth Maul was involved in the underworld stuff, but this episode sort of solidifies the fact that Maul is actually behind the Pike Syndicate. And that to me is pretty interesting. And also Maul references Crimson Dawn, which I thought was interesting because that kind of goes back to the OT as well, the OT era anyway. So really interesting connections here. And again, Dave Filoni really knows what he's doing, but I often do wonder, we see Maul in Solo, a Star Wars story, and of course we see him come back in Rebels, obviously. But we don't know what happens in between Solo and Rebels, so I do wonder if that's going to be explored in a comic or in a later episode of a Dave Filoni directed or produced series. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But lots of interesting connective tissue in this episode. This episode was very, very fast-paced, which could be a pro or a con. I think it was like the opposite of the last episode, which was way too slow. This one may have been way too fast, but I actually enjoyed the brisk pace because we got to get stuff done. Even though I do wish it was a little bit slower, it's okay. It works for this. So the Mandalorians were teased, and they make an appearance at the end of this episode, which is kind of interesting. But I do wonder if these teases are just done sort of as fan service teases, or if they actually are going to get paid off effectively in this Clone Wars show. Because one thing I don't want, and Clone Wars has done this, is sort of tease things that got paid off in the movies later on. Like, last season had a lot of Revenge of the Sith tease, especially for the last few episodes. And I'm okay with that, with them doing that, but I want an actual conclusion. I don't want them to drag it on just forever. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, with the High Republic era starting later this year, they'll have a different time period to focus on. So I want most of these stories to get wrapped up, and then we could go into new stories later on. But I also wonder if people who don't know about this, like semi-casual or people who just forgot, aren't going to really understand the Siege of Mandalore, how it ties into the Mandalorian show. It's not really a part of the story that I was that interested in, but as more time has gone by, I have become more interested. I think partially because of the Mandalorian TV show. The Mandalorians, to me, were always like a side thing, but now they've kind of become the forefront because of that show, and I'm actually kind of cool with it. So, anyways, I liked this episode. Not perfect. I liked it. The pacing was weird, but I liked it again. It worked for me. What did you think? Let me know in the comments, and we'll talk soon.